Electric vehicle charger cable theft is becoming a big problem in the US. Across the country, thieves are cutting the cables off charging stations and selling the copper at scrap yards. Chargepoint claims to have a solution for this problem. And just today, they're announcing their cut-resistant cables and also a new program they're calling Charger Protect, which is basically an alarm system for the charging station that alerts them if somebody's attempting to cut the cables off. So I've asked the CEO of Chargepoint, Rick Wilmer, to come here on State of Charge to discuss the announcement that Chargepoint is making today. So with that said, let's get into it. So I'd like to welcome Rick Wilmer, CEO of Chargepoint, to State of Charge. Rick is no stranger to State of Charge. We've had him on here before, and he's always a very informed and entertaining guest. Rick, thanks for coming on again.
Great to see you, Tom. Great to be here again.
Yeah, so you've got some interesting news that Chargepoint is announcing today. We've all heard about cable theft becoming a problem on charging stations. It looks like you guys have figured out a way to, I guess, if not eliminate it, at least slow it down. So why don't we talk about what you're announcing here today?
Yeah, so we've announcing two innovations today. One is a cut-resistant cable, and the second is effectively an alarm mode we call ChargePoint Protect that will help mitigate this problem as well. And this became pretty pervasive about a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago. We started to see more and more news stories about cable theft, more and more customer support cases reporting cable theft. And it really started to make me mad to see us work so hard to build durable, reliable product, put it out there in the market, and then have these nefarious criminals come in and chop off the cables. Really just got me angry. So, a lot of people feel victimized by this, and I said, "To heck with that. We've got to solve this." So we started working on solutions, and it was a tough engineering problem. It got to the point where I was in my home workshop building prototypes of different ideas for cut-resistant cables to try and mitigate the problem. And, drivers would post pictures of these online. You'd see news stories, you'd see LinkedIn posts, and then you'd have hundreds of comments with all these crazy ideas on how to solve the problem. Leave the cables electrified and electrocute the criminal, fly drones, cameras, surveillance. We have a lot of customers that have video surveillance, and they get pictures of the thieves, pictures of license plates, and they had, a tough time getting law enforcement to help in certain jurisdictions. So, I think as it got more publicized and copper prices went up, people just got the idea that this was maybe a way to make a quick buck, come into a site at night that's not that busy, cut a bunch of cables and leave. And it got ugly. I mean, I have a video of a thief. That's a video surveillance of a Tesla Supercharger site where there's a guy parked charging his Tesla, and the thief pulls up. It's an island configuration. He pulls up on the other side of the island, cuts a bunch of cables that aren't being used. Then he cuts the cable that's charging a car with a guy inside. Sparks shoot 30 feet. He rips the cable out of the car, throws it in his trunk, drives off. The driver gets out like, what the heck is going on? So it got bad. And I felt horrible for our customers that, we'd replace all their cables and literally a week later, they'd get them all cut again. So enough was enough. So that's really what motivated us to get cracking on this. And we finally, with all the great ideas that people offered up, we finally came up with, I think, something that's very effective. One is essentially a physical solution to make it way harder, if not impossible, to cut a cable. And that's the cut-resistant cables. And essentially what we've done, and one of the things that we're able to do is that we design a lot of our cables ourselves. We don't just buy them from a vendor as a component that becomes part of a charging station. We design them and work with the people that make the cable itself. And through that, we've got folks that we collaborate closely with that we're able to embed new materials inside the cable that make it really hard to cut. So it's a combination of hardened stainless steel and some other polymer material. Think, bulletproof vests, that type of stuff. inside the cable. And one of the goals we had was to not increase the diameter of the cable or cause the cable to be heavier or reduce its bend radius to make it harder to handle. So there's some mild compromises in terms of weight and maneuverability, but they're very subtle and hard to notice. So I think we did a good job of accomplishing that goal, but still making them really cut resistant. So that's that innovation, and I'm really thrilled to have that, finally to the point where we're ready to announce it. The other thing that's important about this is we're going to make it available to the whole industry. This is, in my opinion, one of the inhibitors to EV adoption. It doesn't just affect us; it affects all of us that are putting charging equipment into the world. And we're not going to keep this as some kind of Chargepoint differentiator. We'll make this available to any of our competitors or other EVSE manufacturers that want to take advantage of that. And when we announce this, there'll be ways to contact us to express interest, and we can talk to you about how to make that happen. So the second part of the solution is what we call.
Let me interrupt you before we jump onto that. I have cable questions.
Go for it.
I find it very hard to understand how you could make it so, say, cut resistance with stainless steel and think bulletproof vest, as you said, and not dramatically increase diameter and weight. Now, without asking for technical secrets or whatever, how much it has to be heavier? It can't be the same weight. About how much heavier would, without getting into the DC, let's say your level 2 Chargepoint chargers, about how much heavier is that cable than the one you're currently using? State of Charge is powered by Qmerit. After I help you decide which electric vehicle charger you're going to buy, follow the link in the description of my videos and have the installation professionals at Qmerit install it. And by following the link, Qmerit will waive the $200 on-site inspection fee. But in order to have that fee waived, you have to follow the link in the description of my videos.
So I haven't measured it, on the increase in weight per meter. We could get that data, but I personally have handled a lot of them, and I can't notice on a level 2.
So it's not like 50% heavier is what you're saying?
No,
maybe
not
10
even.
or
No way.
15% heavier. Yeah, that's amazing. And
And what you'll find inside that charging cable is that there's obviously conductors for the electricity, and there's other wires in there for communication and sensors. But there's space between them, to embed these new materials without increasing the diameter of the cable. So we were able to take advantage of that to do this in a way that didn't increase the diameter of the cable.
That's amazing, because once the cables start getting heavier, I mean, we're talking particularly DC fast charge cables. Level 2 cables generally are pretty easy to deal with, but the DC fast charge cables can be heavy. They can be a bear. Some of them, they're liquid cooled, some of them. I've on many occasions had to help, say, an elderly person. I'm at a DC fast charger. Plug the cable in. So, with the your DC fast cables, are they also relatively? Are they close to the same weight?
Yeah, so we'll be implementing the technology there as well. But quite frankly, we haven't seen the cutting problem nearly as much on those stations. They tend to be, I think, in more densely traveled, well-lit areas where there's someone nearby, all the time, as opposed to level 2 in a workplace that's shut down for the weekend and it's a dark parking lot. It's a lot easier to steal them. You don't typically see that, the DC fast, especially with liquid cooled cables in that type of a setting. So the vandalism has been way more pervasive on the level 2 workplace chargers, maybe, multifamily, hospitality, those types of settings, not so much on the DC chargers.
Interesting. I would have thought people would go after the DC cables because they're thicker and heavier, and they're going to get more theft per pound or per foot. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I mean, I guess they're taking both of them.
Yeah, one of the things we realized early on is that you cannot assume that the thieves are intelligent. So,
they're opportunistic is what they are.
And nefarious, exactly.
Yeah, they'll take it if it's there. Okay, so with that aside, and one other question. I noticed one of the press photos you guys released is somebody actually using a grinder, and there's sparks flying. Now, obviously, I have grinders. I do construction work. You give me enough time, I'll cut through that cable. I don't care what you make it of. But if somebody were to arrive with a grinder like that, are you saying that they'd have to be out there for an uncomfortably long period of time before they could get through it. These thieves like to, cut through it quickly, get in the car and drive away. Even with a grinder, it's resistant enough to deter them from sticking around to do this.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely harder to cut. I've done that personally. And,
Okay.
with the angle grinder and a cutoff wheel, a battery powered one you can take around with you. We don't see thieves do that very often. They're
Mm.
usually there with some sort of shearing device, snippers or cutters or whatever.
Bolt
But they
cutters.
do show up with angle grinders, and you'll get through this cable with an angle grinder, but it'll take a while. It'll eat the cutoff wheel up. And with the ChargePoint Protect feature, that will hopefully scare them off before they even get through one cable.
And
And
that's the
again,
next
with
thing
this,
we're going to talk about, is ChargePoint Protect.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, the most impactful problem with this, when it happens is when they get a whole site. I
Mhm.
mean, I hate to see even one cable on one charger cut, but when they come in and cut the whole site, it's so expensive for the host. And I mean, there's no alternative for the driver anymore at that site. It's just brutal.
Mhm.
So,
Let me ask you a quick question. Does ChargePoint offer any kind of insurance, like where, you sell the site equipment and you can insure it against vandalism or something like that? Or is that something that the customer would do themselves with an insurance agency?
yeah, that would be more the former
Okay.
where that would be customer would, secure insurance for their property and all the assets on the property. We don't offer anything like that.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure, but now that we're talking about it, I know you offer maintenance plans and things
Yeah.
like that, but I didn't know if you had bundled in some kind of a theft thing. But okay, so now let's talk about ChargePoint Protect. That's part two of this announcement. What exactly is this?
Yep. So ChargePoint Protect is a software feature that's pretty flexible that essentially detects a cable being cut and it blows off a bunch of sirens and flashing lights, and it's obnoxious. Again, I've experienced that firsthand too, and I don't want to be there when it's happening. And, back to the construction of a cable, you've got sensors in the handle that, through a wire communicate with the main charging station. So what we've been able to do is detect an open circuit in one of those wires that's fairly close to the surface of the charging cable. And when that circuit goes open, that triggers this ChargePoint Protect alarm mode to go off. And the feature allows you to define a group of stations in close proximity. So in the example of our parking lot here in Campbell, California, we maybe have 40 or 50 chargers out here within a 200 or 300 foot radius, maybe less. I could put those all in one group. And if someone tries to cut one cable and that's detected, they all go into this blaring, obnoxious, blinking lights alarm mode we call ChargePoint Protect. So as we thought through this, there are settings where you may not want the alarm to go off if you're in a housing setting, at 3 a.m. and scare the crap out of all the people asleep. So you've got ability to only do the lights, only do the sirens, do both. You can set the time that the siren goes off for. You can set it up to alert the station owner through SMS or email that the alarm has been triggered. So it's a pretty flexible software feature that hopefully if a thief shows up on a site with a lot of cables and they go after one, maybe they get through it, maybe they don't. Maybe if they have an angle grinder, they won't with shears, but you've now set off that alarm and hopefully scared them off, and they're not going to get the rest of your site.
One question I have was, your existing stations all have the capability to do this already? Like there's speakers in them and loud enough. They don't have to be retrofitted. Your technology already had this, like lights
Yeah.
and I wasn't aware that that was built in. I never
Yeah.
really noticed it. Where does the light flash from? From the screen itself?
LEDs. No,
Okay.
there's LED lights on the station, that show in use or available, and
Mhm.
those can be turned up and blink very obnoxiously. And then we've got speakers in there
Okay.
that we can blare pretty loudly as well. So as we roll this out for the charge point stations, if you're familiar with our model lineup, the cut resistant cables will be available on everything except the home charger, which is typically not a victim of vandalism. And the ChargePoint Protect feature will be available on our newer stations. So everything more recent than the CT4K. So you can still get the cut resistant cables on the CT4K, but that doesn't have the the infrastructure or the architecture to support the ChargePoint Protect feature. But the CP6000, all of our DC chargers, they'll all support the ChargePoint Protect feature.
Okay. And if a third party company is interested in this, what is it, like a licensing agreement you're going to have? I'm sure
Yeah.
there's going to be some type of monetary exchange. You're not just going to give it to people,
No,
correct?
but yeah, but the cost is pretty trivial in the grand scheme of a charger.
Oh
And
yeah.
again, we're not trying to make this some big profit center. We're trying to help the industry here, and we want to cover our costs to make this, get this all done, and the effort and energy we've put into it. So the way this works is back to the way we design cables. We have some partners that we work closely with that actually build our cables that we design, and they make the cable itself. And those are the folks we've been able to work with to integrate these new materials into the cable to make them so hard to cut. So we're going to start off by referring anyone that's interested to those vendors and give them permission to build a cable with this technology to someone else's specification.
Mhm. Okay. So one last question I have about the whole problem. I've seen the news reports of this. And quite honestly, I've also seen people comment and say, "Oh, that's a California thing. They're crazy out there. This homelessness is rampant, and they're stealing everything. This lawlessness. Yeah, I'm sure you've read comments like that. Some people have varying opinions of what's going on in California. Is this a nationwide problem? How pervasive is this issue?
It's not only nationwide, it's in Europe too. So it's lumpy in terms of where it's concentrated, and I'm not sure why that's the case, but you'll see in certain metro areas, I don't know, cable cutting goes viral. I don't know, the news spreads between the thieves and they all give it a shot or something. So there'll be an outburst in a bunch of cases in a certain area, and then they'll calm down and then it'll bubble up in some other place, but it's been throughout the country. We've also seen it happen in Europe for sure, at least in places where you don't bring your own cable to charge, where obviously this isn't a problem, but that's a whole different miserable user experience, in my opinion. But for example, on LinkedIn, the CEO of Instavolt, which is a big CPO in the UK, he put a post up on a big problem that they faced with this in the UK probably a month or two ago. So it's not just the US, it's elsewhere as also.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to checking out one of these cables. Maybe I could arrange something with your team to get a hold of one just to do a little, say,
Do it.
review of one.
Bring out
But
your most aggressive cutting tools, Tom, and give it a shot on a podcast.
okay, that sounds like fun. I think I'll take you up on that. I'll follow up with your team and see when they can get me a hold of one of these, and we'll have some fun with it. We'll see exactly how hard it is to cut through it. Before we take off, Rick, is there anything else you want to mention about ChargePoint? Any other news you got going on? I'll give you the opportunity to have the floor.
Yeah, nothing big new, just a couple of, things we've already announced recently that seem to be really taking off in popularity. One is our Omniport, which about, which is our, captive adapter. So you're, as a NACS or CCS1 driver, you just don't need to worry about what connectors on that station, and owners don't have to worry about getting a ratio of charging ports to parking places and car types. It's universal. That's really been popular, and it's taken off. The other one that really surprised me is a feature that we implemented in our mobile app, back on the theme of charger reliability and uptime. It's the internal code name, we called it picture to resolution, but it's a report a problem feature in our mobile app, where you as a driver, if you encounter a broken charge point station that isn't functioning, you can go into this report a problem part of the mobile app, and you're prompted with a couple of easy questions with pull down menu answers, and then you're asked to take a couple of pictures of the station. And we trained an AI model to diagnose the problem with the station based on the pictures, and usually we can geolocate the station at the same time. And from the time we launched that, in the first month we had over 10,000 cases reported. So it was awesome in terms of just helping us discover broken stations out there, or stations that had issues. The term I used is the best sensor in the world to tell us about a broken station's a driver. And they're more than happy to tell us. So now we've got an actionable way to take that data in and go get stations repaired. The other cool part of the feature is that for you as the driver that reported the problem, you get to track your case. So you can, all your cases that you reported, you can see exactly what the status is, if the repair is pending, if the repairs happen, et cetera. And it exceeded all my expectations in terms of popularity. And I'm really grateful for all the drivers that have helped us, find stations that aren't working correctly that we can go fix. So it's been a big hit, and I'm really thrilled with that.
That's fantastic. And one of the things I like to remind my viewers of is that when sometimes people complain about they arrived and a ChargePoint charger isn't working and they call out ChargePoint for it. The ChargePoint's business model is they sell their products, and then station owners and managers are responsible for the upkeep of it. It's the
Mhm.
property owner's charger. So you can't roll a truck and fix a charger. It's
No.
not yours. You've sold it. But I don't think
Yes.
a lot of EV drivers understand that, and they say, "Oh, the ChargePoint network. It's the second time I've gone to a charger and it's broken." But that's not on you to fix it. The site owner has to contact you to fix it. So I think sometimes you guys get a little bit more say criticism than what you deserve, because I don't think people understand that you have a slightly different business model than the other CPOs that are actually
Yeah.
own the equipment and manage it. So whenever I
Yes.
get an opportunity to remind people of that, I do. But that said, through the app, they can notify you, and then you will reach out to the site owner and say, "Hey, one of your customers just told us that your charger isn't working. Would you like us to come and fix it?"
Exactly. And the vast majority of the time they say, heck yeah, thanks for telling us. We didn't even know. Get out here and fix it, please. So I appreciate you helping clarify that, because we get confused with it being a CPO all the time. And CPOs are our customers. They're the people we want to provide with great technology to do what they do for a living, which is provide electricity to drivers' vehicles, which is not the business we're in. We're in the business of helping them do that successfully. And we never want to compete with them. That's not what we do.
Okay. Listen, Rick, thanks again for coming on. It's always great having you on here on State of Charge. Good luck with these new theft resistant cables and the new ChargePoint Protect program. I'll follow up with your people because I want to get a hold of one of these cables and test just how theft resistant it is. I think we'll have some fun with that. Thanks again for
Yep.
coming on.
All right, Tom. Great to talk with you. Take care.